The massive yacht's wake exploded like a rogue wave, smashing Tom's tiny dinghy against jagged rocks. Water surged, cold and relentless, swallowing his years of memories and freedom. He barely clung to the shattered wood, rage burning in his chest. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Tom Reynolds had spent his entire life at sea. A retired Navy captain in his late 60s, he cherished his small dinghy, Liberty, which bobbed gently every morning in the peaceful cove of Clearwater Bay. To Tom, it wasn't just a boat, it was a symbol of his independence, a last thread connecting him to his decades of service and freedom. One radiant summer afternoon, as Tom was preparing to sail out for a quiet day of fishing, a massive luxury yacht, the Sovereign, gleaming and imposing, suddenly veered too close to the shore. Its careless wake surged violently, swamping Tom's dinghy, tossing it like a toy in the waves. Tom barely managed to cling to his sinking vessel, his face flushed with shock and anger. The yacht's crew barely glanced back, too absorbed in their lavish party and champagne. Tom's motivation was simple: respect for the sea and his dignity as a man who had given his life to protect others. But the yacht's captain, Greg Sinclair, a wealthy businessman used to bending rules and flaunting power, saw the bay as his playground, no matter who got hurt. To Greg, Tom was just an inconvenient ripple on his smooth surface. The injustice of the moment struck hard. Tom's dinghy was more than a boat. It was a piece of his soul destroyed by reckless arrogance. As the sun set, Tom sat on the shore, soaked and furious, his spirit bruised. He swore he wouldn't let this slide. The dawn came slow, its light pale and tentative over Clearwater Bay, as if the world itself hesitated to witness the battle about to unfold. Tom Reynolds rose, with a fire burning in his chest, the sting of humiliation transforming into a fierce resolve. The wreckage of Liberty lay half submerged in the shallows behind him, its fractured hull a scar against the placid water. But Tom's gaze was no longer fixed on the ruins. His mind raced with plans, calls to make, alliances to forge. The day was not lost. It was just beginning. He picked up the phone, fingers trembling not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of purpose. His first call was to the Clearwater Marina, the heart of the local boating community. He spoke with the dockmaster, a stout man named Harris, whose voice betrayed a sympathy Tom had not dared expect. Within hours, word spread like wildfire. Fishermen, retirees, shopkeepers, all drawn from the same salt-streaked shore, answered Tom's call to arms. This was no longer just about a damaged dinghy. It was about the principle of respect. Respect for the bay, for the people who lived by it, for the invisible threads that held their fragile community together. The press arrived next, their cameras trained on Tom's weathered face as he recounted the reckless cruelty of the Sovereign's passage. Reporters sniffed the scent of a classic David versus Goliath story, a lone veteran standing against the extravagance and impunity of the wealthy elite. Headlines blossomed overnight. Yacht owner's arrogance threatens Clearwater Bay. Retired Navy captain battles corporate carelessness. The community's collective voice grew louder, a tide swelling with indignation. Across town, in his sleek penthouse overlooking the marina, Greg Sinclair sat, surrounded by the trappings of power: fine suits, expensive liquor, and an indifferent security detail. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from lawyers and PR teams, all spinning damage control. Greg waved them off with a practiced smile, dismissing Tom's claims as an unfortunate accident, nothing more than a minor inconvenience blown out of proportion by a bitter old man. His arrogance was palpable, a fortress built on wealth and entitlement. To him, the bay was a private playground, its rules pliable and its inhabitants insignificant obstacles to his amusement. But Tom was no ordinary man to be shrugged aside. Every call he made, every letter he sent, every interview he gave was a brick laid in a fortress of resistance. His Navy contacts, men and women who had fought alongside him in distant waters, lent their support, some with advice, others with official connections. One name stood out: Commander Lisa Harper, a woman whose keen mind and iron will had earned her respect in the naval hierarchy. Lisa remembered Tom not just as a comrade, but as a man of unwavering integrity. When he reached her, his voice steady despite exhaustion, she understood the stakes. "This isn't just about a boat," Lisa said. "It's about honor. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves." Together, they plotted a course beyond mere public outcry. Lisa's position allowed access to channels Tom could not reach alone: legal avenues, safety inspections, and naval protocols. They pored over maritime regulations, identifying every instance where Greg Sinclair's yacht had crossed boundaries, ignoring speed limits, and endangering small craft. The turning point came unexpectedly late one evening. Tom, exhausted and restless, sat before his laptop, sifting through messages and news clippings when a tip arrived from a dockworker who had remained anonymous. Hidden among the security cameras installed around the harbor was footage. Raw, unedited, undeniable. The video showed the Sovereign barreling recklessly close to the shore, its wake smashing against fishing boats, its captain laughing off warnings. Worse still, multiple incidents over months documented a pattern of blatant disregard for safety protocols. Tom's heart pounded as he watched the reckless passes, the near collisions, the careless waves that shattered nets and smashed hulls. This was not an accident. It was habitual abuse, a careless tempest unleashed by one man's entitlement. He immediately shared the footage with Lisa, who coordinated with local authorities and media outlets. The community, once simmering with quiet frustration, erupted in righteous fury. Now armed with proof, Tom and his allies pressed harder. The battle was no longer a whisper against a monolith, but a roar demanding accountability. The struggle to reclaim the bay's dignity had begun in earnest, each day a step toward justice, not just for a broken dinghy, but for the soul of Clearwater Bay itself. Before the first light of dawn could breach the horizon, Clearwater Bay became an arena of silent authority. A squadron of Navy destroyers, sleek and formidable, slipped through the mist like specters summoned by an unyielding summons to justice. Their steel hulls cleaved the tranquil waters with deliberate purpose, casting elongated shadows that stretched like warnings across the glassy surface. The bay, once a serene refuge, now a battleground of principle, held its breath as these warships anchored with precision, a tangible reminder that recklessness had consequences far beyond personal grievance. Word traveled swiftly through the tight-knit community, morphing whispers into a chorus of vindication. This was no mere clash between a retired captain and a wealthy yachtsman. It had escalated into a matter of maritime law, respect for shared waters, and the collective voice of those who refused to be steamrolled by privilege. Commander Lisa Harper, embodying the Navy's resolve, orchestrated the operation with a meticulous blend of discipline and empathy. Her presence was both reassurance and declaration, a sentinel guarding not only the bay, but the dignity of those who called it home. Under the Navy's vigilant scrutiny, Greg Sinclair's gilded world began to unravel. The once unassailable tycoon found himself cornered by undeniable evidence: his yacht's reckless navigations, violations of maritime codes, and the callous disregard for safety that had imperiled lives. The heavy fines levied against him were mere formalities compared to the blow to his reputation, an untouchable image fractured under the weight of truth and accountability. His license, a symbol of his dominion over the waters, was suspended indefinitely, stripping him of the very privilege he had wielded like a weapon. For Tom Reynolds, the victory was deeply personal. Standing at the water's edge, the cool breeze carrying the salt-tinged scent of the sea, he felt a surge of something he hadn't known for years: vindication. His hands, weathered by decades of service and toil, rested lightly on the rail of a small boat docked nearby. The destroyers patrolled steadily, their presence a tangible shield for the bay's fragile peace. It was a quiet triumph, born from persistence, courage, and an unshakable belief in justice. The bay's tranquility returned not as a fragile illusion, but as a hard-won reality. The community breathed easier, their daily rhythms restored and fortified by a renewed sense of security and mutual respect. Tom's story, once a solitary stand against arrogance, became a beacon, a testament that even those who seemed small or retired could ignite change that rippled far beyond their immediate shores. In this moment, the bay was more than water and sand. It was a symbol of resilience and rightful order. The quiet strength of one man had rekindled the spirit of an entire community, reminding them that respect was not a privilege granted by wealth or power, but a fundamental right, earned through honor and steadfastness. As dawn's first rays gilded the horizon, Tom's gaze remained fixed on the patrolling destroyers. They were more than vessels. They were guardians of a promise, a dawn of reckoning that ensured Clearwater Bay would never again be a playground for the reckless, but a sanctuary for those who treasured its peace. In the stillness of that morning, justice had sailed in, and with it, a new chapter of hope and resilience began to unfold.